right, guys, here today with Sam, and we're going to talk about something we've talked about in a previous episode. We were dealing with like media and information. How do you know what's going on in the world? How would you figure out if something was true, if you were looking for news or information or something like that? And we did that before with a boomer. I'm Gen X, and now we're here with a Gen Z, Sam. So, Sam, if someone would tell you, hey, this thing just happened, whatever that event was, is there like a process that you go through to figure out if that thing was true, or how to figure out something about it?
I guess my first thing to do is to just look it up on my phone or something. I don't really I'll look at news credits or something like that, but I guess I get it all from the internet.
So you would just Google it, basically?
Yeah.
Okay. and is there any kind of what about social media? Is there any kind of I don't know, would you go to social media at all for info like that?
Absolutely.
You would? Okay. So that's a big difference, I think, between what I would do anyway. Just because, I was talking to the boomer also, and, they were relying more on written information. And then it was sort of television as it came along. But your generation sort of skipped television, I guess, right? I mean, would you, as far as news is concerned, information, would you ever, turn on a news channel, I guess is what I'm asking?
Maybe. I mean, it obviously depends on, what it is. If it's something, worldly, I might, look at some news source, but really I just look it up.
So, because you would, even if you wanted to see video of something, you would look it up online anyway. You wouldn't go to a TV and try to find a channel that is showing the coverage of that thing.
Yeah, I guess where I could find it first,
Okay, so it would be the phone.
It
right?
would be the phone.
So pretty much everything is centered on these, right? So I find that interesting because there's so many avenues of
information.
Yeah, of information, but good and bad. Because there's, if somebody tells me they get their news from TikTok, I'm going to question them about a number of things, because that's not a good news source. I wouldn't say. I mean, you could know that something happened, but the details of those things, I don't know.
It's a platform based around just trying to get your attention span down.
That's right.
Yeah.
Short attention span. We're moving on. That was the thing, and then to get people to watch it, you have to have something edgy or funny, or
it's got to click for them.
Yeah, there's got to be something there. So if there was a space shuttle problem or something like that, that somebody said, hey, did you hear about this thing that just happened? We landed another rover somewhere, on Mars again, and this thing happened. You would immediately go to your phone.
I'd Google it, but I guess with that kind of thing, I'd try to look straight at NASA or something, a website.
So you would try to go to the source then?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, because we were thinking about, a lot of people give Gen Z a bad rap for not knowing about the world.
Misinformed.
Yeah, being misinformed. Maybe not as bad as millennials, because millennials get a lot of shade thrown at them, probably. But Gen Z too, I think, because you're coming in sort of your entire existence. The internet has been there, right? Because you didn't have to have another form of looking anything up, really. When I was younger, I had to look at, encyclopedias. So that may be on the shelf at grandma's house.
Yeah.
That were printed 20 years before I was even looking for that item. And so if there was something different in it, I couldn't have figured that out, So in some ways, then having the internet available can get you better information anyway. But as far as like trust, is there thinking about the media and trust is because recently there's a big hubbub about whether we should trust media or not and all that mess going on. But so do you have like the go-to is simply Google, or is it, I mean, because if you pulled up in one article that said one thing and you pull up a different article that said something else, how do you figure out which thing might be closer to the truth? Is there a way that you do that, or is it just intuitive, or is it, you understand what I'm asking there?
Yeah, I guess I feel like a lot of news is more emotional than like they're based on the facts. So like, say you're watching some like just throwing out there like CNN or something.
Yeah.
They're gonna take the story and they're gonna put it their way, and then
Right.
another news source is gonna put it their way. I guess when I look it up, I guess I'm just looking for facts,
Yeah.
and I might check a couple other sources, but there's still that mistrust in there going up on the internet,
Okay. So the same mistrust is on the internet, just like it would be for people watching it on TV anyway.
Absolutely.
So you're not just taking the first article that you find that Google throws out and says, well, that's what it is, right? You're kind of trying to figure that out and analyze it yourself. So as far as information, so if we set the news aside for just a moment, if you needed to know something, right? You're writing a paper, you had some assignment for school or something like that. Is it pretty much the same method?
Kinda. I mean, a lot of the times when we'll be like writing stuff for school or like filling out an online worksheet or whatever, they'll give us sites to look up, and then you got to find where it is, and then if you got to find evidence, I guess you just look up more about it.
So you're saying that the school sometimes will give you actual sites to look at.
Yeah, they'll give us like .gov type stuff, like
Okay.
reputable
So
websites.
things are okay. So they're trying to steer you into a direction where you would get facts and not somebody's spin on it.
Yeah.
Basically. Okay.
They'd never give us like a news source or something. It'd always be just like an article.
Okay. But it would be like some peer reviewed either, like you said, .gov, like a government-based website, or some research organization or something like that, but not really. They wouldn't give you Fox News or CNN or something like that. No. Okay. I didn't know that they would even provide that, so that's interesting.
Yeah. It depends on the assignment. I mean, a lot of the times they'll give you like little things, or you can find where the teacher got it from sometimes, because I don't really like when you do sorry.
No, you're fine.
They'll do like a quizzes flashcard thing,
Right.
and they'll copy the worksheet straight from there, and you can find where the facts are. I guess that's a big problem with like.
That's a problem with the internet too.
Yeah,
So you can.
because if your teacher found it from the internet, you can find it from here.
Sure. Especially if your teacher is older than you are, which they're going to be. You're probably more proficient with the internet than they are anyway. So if they found it, then you really would be able, you can really find it, I guess.
Yeah, it's almost just right there. A lot of the times it is right there.
Okay. Interesting. So would you ever turn to like a printed source for something?
Sure.
Like a newspaper, like an actual paper, like a real newspaper.
The only thing I can think of is like, I don't know if this is really relevant, but like my grandma used to sign up those National Geographic books.
Right.
And I'd get a bunch of them, and that's where I'd get all my animal facts stuff, because I was just fascinated with those.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, and I use those too, right? Because most of they've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I know my grandparents had them, and I know people that had like, going back to the 60s, or 70s, they had almost every issue like laid out on these shelves or big stacks somewhere in a room, these National Geographics. My mom's mom actually kept newspapers, which they're all gone now, right? But she kept them, and she had a room that just had, like, if you wanted to find something, it was in there.
Like a library of newspapers.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the newspaper, it was an archive, right? Just like you would find that section at an actual brick and mortar library, right? Which is kind of really going away, right? I mean, because maybe when you were younger, did you ever go to the library? Like parents take you, grandparents take you, or did you ever need to go to the library like for school?
I've never had to go for school purposes, but I've definitely been to the library before. I mean, when we had recommended reading before.
Yeah.
I guess I'd just go buy the book, but I've been to the library for that kind of thing.
Okay. But so do you think, though, that they're relevant anymore? Like those kind of establishments?
Like newspaper?
No, well, just a library, like an actual building. Because, as you said before, you just look at this, right?
I'm trying to think about what it is.
There are certain things that are there.
This is an off-shell topic, but
this is a random conversation.
Yeah, the whole Christmas thing.
Yeah,
how people want to say it was like on a pagan holiday or whatever.
Right.
I've tried looking that up. Like I did my own research for Christmas, and like when I look it up, you'll never find anything about it. But if you go find like Christian scholar books or whatever, and you go look into those, you'll find like reputable dates from the church and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So you're talking about going back and looking in, older literature.
Yeah.
Not something that you could find on the internet easily. That is something too that I think we should bring up, because since you just said that, because I have no doubt that some of those sources are digitized, but
they're hard to find. They
are, because the way the ranking system works and the algorithms work on the different search platforms, right? If you go to Google, they're going to give you the source maybe that is being hit more often, or for whatever reason, it's up in the rankings. But that may not be the best source for that information, right? So I think that's going to actually have an impact at some point on figuring out, what's fact and what's not, right? Because now it's getting easier to fake things. You can just produce whatever content you want, like this content right now, right? We can just say whatever we want, and it's out there on the internet, and people can look at it and decide this is a fact or this is not a fact. There's sort of a review, right? You can have because of comments and likes and these sorts of things, but is that really a system to determine, right and wrong, or whether this thing is factual or not? And I don't think it is. So I don't know the solution to that, but I think that at some point it's going to come to a head, where it's going to be difficult to find it. If you're not computer savvy, if you don't know how to look information up, I think it leads people into trouble. I think specifically, lots of people today that are from previous generation, I was sort of right at the appropriate time, the internet becomes available.
Yeah.
And so I was able to look things up and begin to use it and try to understand it. But my parents' generation and before, no. And I think that leads to a lot of trouble online, especially on social media platforms where older generations are, boomers and on, where if something is shared from any source, I've seen people share things and it's like, it's something about, say, a president or Congress and how terrible they're doing or whatever, and there's some chart that's on there. And if you look at the actual account they're sharing from, it's called like We Love Bunnies or something, right? It's not even, it's a meaningless account just to generate likes and shares so they can share it or do whatever so they can sell it, basically. It's for money, right? And people they think, well, that's fact. I just saw that thing. And then my friend did it, and so there's this is we're going to go through a period, I think, of time where my generation is going to struggle too, though, and that's going to kind of lead us into a different topic that I don't know if we can pick up during this one, but because I was thinking about deep fakes and things like that.
Yeah.
Because that and AI generated content. But since we're talking about that, as far as the news is concerned, like if I look up on my phone right now because I downloaded ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
And now if I type something into Google, I get an AI response at the top of the thing. The thing is turned on. I didn't turn it off. Where it's scanning for me and saying, this is the answer, right, that it found. Now, there's some trouble with that.
Yeah. Because they can put whatever they want under there.
They could, right? Well, it's learning from us, right? And if we're the ones putting the information out there, how reliable is it really? That's the trouble, I think. I don't know. Is there something about media and information that maybe troubles you, or you think that might end up being a problem? Like the way that you're experiencing the world now, right? and as things continue to develop, does it look like there's a problem on the horizon with anything, or not really? Do you see that you can get through that just fine?
I definitely see that, like, with our generation, it's more of like, what's the word? It's more of like a playful kind of thing. Like, people use the internet all the time. And it's not as much of a tool anymore as it is just an escape for some people. And I don't really, like, they'll look up news credits anymore, but, like, I just don't think they care. Like,
okay. So you're saying then basically you're kind of speaking for your generation a little bit here, right? In general, right? That's the way they see it, but you don't see it that way.
I mean, it depends.
Or you see it both ways. Like there's a moment to play, and then there's
a usefulness to the internet that people aren't getting out of it.
Okay.
And I don't think people view it enough that way, so they spend too much time, just on TikTok or various other platforms, just wasting away when they could, like, actually be learning something through what they're doing.
Okay, so you think it's basically
it's a misused tool.
It's the new video game, essentially, from what it was in my generation, right? Because it was a time just to spend time doing something that was fun. So the internet has become fun and not the tool. You think that it was, because when I was younger, it was strictly a tool, really. And then, think about, oh man, what is it called now? Before Facebook, it was, we had web pages. MySpace. Yeah, you had MySpace, which was kind of, you could tailor to your own way. You made your own website and you opened it up, and there were, there was a song playing that you wanted playing and various pictures. It was like a collage on that page, which now looking back is kind of terrible, right? Yeah. I don't know. Is it still around in any way? I don't even know.
I have no idea how MySpace worked.
Yeah. But anyway, you had your own space. You had your own website is what you had. It was the precursor to what would become Facebook and all the other social media stuff. But anyway, so that was kind of where you could start doing that, and blogs were beginning where people could write things down. And, I see people today sharing, news or information about any number of topics, and they're quoting a blog that some random person wrote, and that's a reputable source because it's out there. So still, I think there's a group of people that don't understand how simple it is to put content out there. Yeah. Right? I think it's complicated to do that, and like there's a process or something.
I think it's spread out though. Like, it's not necessarily my generation that's just like so good at using the internet, or like millennials. I think there's misinformed people of all spectrums on like stages of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
I think there's definitely like some 15, 16-year-olds that don't know how to use the internet just as effectively as like an 80-year-old woman.
Okay.
They just like they can access it a lot better, obviously, but like neither of them use it effectively.
I think the effectiveness is in the use of social media. Like, yeah, I know how to use Instagram correctly and use filters or whatever, where somebody else who's opening it up the first time may not understand why did it do that when I double tapped on that picture, or am I liking everything as I'm doing that? They may not understand what they're doing, right? But that's not the same thing as using the internet, like you said before, as a tool, right? And I so I do think there is that weird view of it. But what's interesting to me is that I think it was 1987, the Fairness Doctrine went away, which was supposed to give alternate sides of a viewpoint equal time, right? So if I had a radio show or a television show, and I was speaking about a particular topic, I had to give an alternate view. If it was a Democrat speaking, they had to give the Republican view of it. Or if there was somebody that said, smoking doesn't cause cancer, then you had to give somebody an equal view that says smoking does cause cancer. That was what it was supposed to be for. And then by 1980, it went away completely in 1987, right? And then you have the rise of all these other things like talk radio and all the different cable news programs that you were talking about earlier, like Fox and CNN and all these other things. They came about because they can have a view, and you don't have to give an alternate view.
Yeah.
At first glance, it seems like this is a bad thing to do that because of the information that we're putting out there. Like, it's not curated at all. Anybody can put whatever they want. But if that wouldn't have happened, you couldn't have the internet. Like this, it wouldn't be possible to have the internet in the way that we have it today.
Yeah.
It would be, like North Korea, where there's like 7 websites or something.
Yeah.
And they're all government, curated or something like that. So it's such an odd thing. I think every generation deals with it. Some disruptive technology that comes in that changes the world, and it changes the way that we see the world. And there's some growing pains in that, and I feel like we're at that point right now. We're at the edge of these sort of real growing pains with the internet, because as I mentioned before, AI and deepfakes, the proliferation now of quantum computers, which are going to really change some things, I think, because of the amount of information they can process, especially if you're running AI on those things. Right now, already, people will argue with chatbots.
I got you.
Have you seen that online? Like there's a post, and it's a typical response. If you know what a bot looks like, they'll say something to someone, and then they'll talk to them and tell them, get off my page or whatever. And then there's this conversation that goes back and forth where they're arguing with a bot, So that is bothersome for me, because there's not really a way to, I guess there is, but it doesn't say bot on there.
Yeah.
It doesn't say this is good information, this is bad information.
But like with TikTok, even I think it's views. You can buy views, which is just insane.
Buy views.
Yeah.
That doesn't even make any sense.
I don't get it.
So you can buy views, which.
So like if you're
to make you hire an algorithm.
Yeah, if your content gets on the For You page or whatever for a couple of like streams or whatever, they'll offer you like, I can't remember if it's views or likes, but same difference, honestly.
Yeah.
Because if they like it, they read it.
Sure.
And you can put more views on it, and it'll push it in the algorithm.
Sure, to make it show more so that it'll get more views and more likes.
Yeah.
Right. So you're like kickstarting it, essentially.
Yeah, you literally put money into it.
It doesn't even make any sense. Yeah, so if it's fake on how many views and how many likes and all, I know you can do that with other platforms too, because people do it with bots and such, right? I know like YouTube has this strict policy with their, at least the ones that are monetized, right, where they review it to try to see if there were bots that liked it, or if there were bots that viewed it or whatever, and they could see the difference between those things. Which I would imagine, though, a company like YouTube, they have the resources to do something like that.
Yeah.
Like Google would. But whenever Google didn't even exist, though. Whenever when I knew the internet, right? It was the early 2000s, I think. It was 90. Was it 98? Google? I think it was 98, because Yahoo started in 94, and there was already Lycos and WebCrawler and all these other ones that don't exist.
Firefox.
Yeah, and because I have a Yahoo email address that I signed up for in 1994, and my PIN number, I had a PIN number, not a password. It was only 4 digits, just like a debit card.
Yeah.
And they finally made me change it
That's
about
insane.
7 or 8 years ago. But so I've had it for that long, and so I've seen the internet sort of change and turn into something else other than what it was. And I think you're right. Now it's like the new TV, right? Because everything is streaming, and if you want content, you can get it right now. I can see it immediately, which is good and bad.
Yeah, I don't think you had like the TV generation is mainly millennials, right?
Yeah.
Like little kids just sitting at the TV just flipping channels.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as chaotic to the brain, but at the same time, definitely with TikTok, I mean, you're just scrolling.
Yeah, you're just watching whatever. Yeah.
And most of the people that are choosing the content they want to watch, it's loaded with almost small brain is what I mean to say. I don't know how to word that. But
yeah, I understand what you mean.
It's baby food.
Some of it's stupid.
Yeah, it's just why would you watch that?
Yeah, some of it's just ridiculous. And that leads me to the other topic I was going to get, these rabbit holes that you can go down on the internet, right? It doesn't matter, I think, which platform you're using, because the way these algorithms work, they want you to be on that platform longer, right? And it takes you down a weird path sometimes, right? Because if you watch this video, you're like, oh, you're going to love this then, right? And there's the up next video if it's on YouTube, right? And you can go down some weird paths. I was watching some weird video recently, and then it went to this other weird one, and it was just a piece of bread moving on the screen, and which I don't understand. I watched it for about 10 seconds, and then I scrolled forward because the video was an hour long.
Word.
And I zoomed forward, and it was the same piece of bread, and the thing had 1 million views. It was just a piece of bread that was wiggling. It was a CGI piece of bread, okay? That was it. So I went to that account, and I looked at that account, and all of the videos on that account were the same. It was about nothing. It was literally nothing. It would just show something on the screen.
Well, you got those those AI art images.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just the video of the generated picture or whatever. And yeah, you can kind of toy with it a little bit, you tell it what you want, but
yeah,
for the most part, it's just a computer generated image, and people just watch it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get it. But I mean, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe there's certain people that want to. I don't know if it's kids watching it or.
I think there's so many niches on the internet now that people just get into because they think that's what they would like.
Yeah. Huh. I guess and once you find it, if that content generates likes and views, then people are going to continue to produce more of that content that produces those likes and views. And it gets more and more and more niche over time. It's sort of like getting a PhD in something that's been around for a long time. You have to find a very specific a topic. I mean, you can't just say, well, I want to research electricity, right? That doesn't, what does that even mean? So you have to be more pointed than that. You can, okay, so now electronics, well, that's not enough either. Computers, well, that's nothing. You have to get very specific because of the development of these technologies. It's caused us to have to dig deeper, and that's what's happening, I think, with the internet too. The number of people on the planet, everybody's sort of finding their place in that. One of the other topics I wanted to talk about just briefly was, like bullying.
Oh.
Okay.
On the internet?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do I say this? My generation, people were just pushed on the ground, called names, whatever, and we all went home.
Yeah.
Okay. Not saying it was good. I'm just saying,
if you got it out, you got it out right.
Yeah. It was over, right? You could at least go home and escape it.
Yeah.
Now, with the way that media is in general, there is no way. I mean, if you're we're attached to these things, right? And because they're attached to our hip, and you continue to get these notifications that are coming in if somebody is piling on, how do we get out of that, right? How do we get away from that, I guess is one of the questions. The other is, when I was thinking about this, someone told me that they felt like Gen Z was more self-aware than previous generations.
They know that they're like killing their
They know what they're doing.
They know they're killing their attention span, but they still choose to do it because it's fun for them.
Yeah, and like, bullying or mistreating people or saying things like, doing things that maybe previous generations didn't even consider at all, where people are saying, well, that's a problem, that's misogynistic or whatever, that statement, that sentence, that thing you just said in that phrase is a problem, where people are saying, well, Gen Z is sort of more self-aware of those kind of issues. Would you say that like that's true in general? Do you feel that way about your generation, like of being more aware of problems that are in the world?
Not all the time. I think they see a problem and they like cancel culture and everything. They want to eradicate it, But that's a problem within itself. And I mean,
because now you're piling on, and what are you doing? You're doing the
same thing.
You're doing the very same thing. I kind of feel like that issue isn't just like Gen Z became more emotionally intelligent. I feel like it's a product of the culture, because we have this instant knowledge of whatever's going on in the world, because we have these in our pocket, because our friends have experienced things, because we see all the different ways that people are talking to one another very publicly. And that kind of thing didn't exist previously, right? Like, how do we communicate from one generation to the next where people will listen, where people hear it, right? And there's a certain context where, say, the boomers will listen, can hear it, but it's not going to be the same as Gen X or Gen Z or millennials or any of them, right? It's not going to be the same. There's a different way of communication.
They're going to take it a different way.
Yeah, but if a boomer wants to communicate to your generation, what would they have to do to communicate in a way that your generation would hear it?
I guess a lot of boomers, or at least the ones we're around in the southern United States.
Yeah.
A lot of them are very prideful, and that's okay. I mean, obviously respect your elders, and there's a lot of that generation has a lot of pride, and it's hard to listen when somebody won't get off their pedestal or something. You talk face to face.
So you feel like they talk down to your generation, basically.
They talk down to the generation before ours still, and that's why I think there's such a disconnect between like the three like Gen X, Millennial, and Gen Z. There's such a disconnect between those three and boomers.
So you think then? So how does it work then? What do they have to? What would they do? Because I don't think that some of them believe they're doing it.
Oh yeah.
You see what I mean? I don't think that they're thinking they're intentionally oozing out pride. You know what I mean? I don't think that that's their.
It's not their motive.
No, it's not their motive, but the perception of it is that's what it looks like, right? And I think that's the difference culturally, right? Because we've changed so much that we can't see.
Can't see past it.
Yeah, we can't. And so in other words, if you felt like somebody's talking down to you, you would disconnect.
I try to hear it. I don't think a lot of people do that anymore. Like they completely disconnect from the conversation. But I mean, I try to listen to it.
But if we were talking earlier about the differences in the way that we take in media, that we take in information, and if you have somebody that grew up reading a newspaper, like that was the primary source of everything, where they got their information from, or they traveled to a library and they looked those things up, that was their information, right? That was their world. How does someone who's in that world communicate in a way that grabs the attention of someone, say, who's Gen Z, right? Would they need to? Because I think that for whatever reason, we're biased on the way that we understand the world, the way that we see it. We just are. And every generation is, right?
Yeah.
So if I see that print media, like we got to write it down because that's, the way that we see it, then we need to write this down and hand these sheets out to these millennials to have them read that. I don't think that that's an effective strategy, right? If somebody handed you an essay and said you need to go read this to learn some things, would that be effective for you or for your generation in general?
In general, no. But I don't I don't want to say back in the day, but like about 50 years ago, reading was all everybody did, right?
Sure.
Like just read everything. I don't think.
Well, we're consuming media completely different. We have even books, right? Most people are consuming them as audible.
Yeah.
As audibles rather than actually reading them. So if they wanted to communicate, it would have to be at least in the format that you're used to taking in information. I mean, would you think that's true? I mean,
that's why I think with like the Christian perspective, like generations who grew up reading the Bible, it's a lot easier for them to connect in that way.
So, okay. So you think that if we say, well, you have to pull out the physical book and we're going to go through this thing.
Yeah.
It feels like a different world.
Yeah. I feel like not only do you learn more, if you're reading it with someone, I mean, you both pick up on different things and, you have conversations about them. So
what if it was like a video, like short video? Is that more, would that reach more, I guess, is what I'm saying.
It might reach more, but I don't think people get informational gain out of it. Like they might see it, they might hear it for a couple seconds.
So where then is Gen Z going to get? Like if I have something important that I need to share, how do I do that? Like what would be the primary method or way that could be shared so that Gen Z would hear it or attempt to understand it at least?
I think with the whole thing, you got to pull them in and then get more in depth. Like with the shorts thing you're doing, you got to pull viewers in
videos
and then get them to listen to the whole thing.
It needs to be done in this format, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I was leaning toward. That's what I'm thinking. that's just the way that the world's going. And I think there's a lot of people that, because they grew up in a particular way, they can't see past the way that they came to know things about God, about the world, or about anything other than the way that they saw it and that they came to know it. And they think, well, if I can just get somebody to get into the position that I was in, then they'll understand. But that's not really true, right? That's true in a different way for each generation, really. Where, like I said, even into the millennials, right? Millennials and Gen Z, sort of, it's more of a audio-visual format, is a thing that sort of is the window into their world. Yeah. Because you essentially, you're not living in the same world as someone who's a boomer.
No,
right?
It's a different perspective, like, with everything.
Foundationally, like, it's different in every way. Because if I'm starting off from this point of view, right, from this is the way that I see the world, and you're starting off in this place, we're not going to meet at all, like, especially if there's no overlap in what we're doing. Anyway, so if I want to get information to Gen Z, I have to participate in the world like Gen Z does. But then, like, if I'm doing it, it can't be in a way that's talking down or perceived as being better in some way.
Like, even what I said with, like, like how you said with the foundationals, like, real life example last night, like, power went out because it was raining, and my Switch was charged. I had it playing music so I could go to sleep. Like, somebody like you said, when Mr. Larry's dead, he was born before electricity was around. Yeah, they went to sleep like that every night. It wouldn't have been hard for him, Right.
So you're used to the background noise and all the other stuff, and that, I think, is a hard concept for many to grasp. Where if somebody is, like this while we're talking, from some people's perspective, it looks like you're not engaged in the conversation.
Well, like, even with, like, these, like,
that's right.
Earbuds and everything. It's a constant fixation for sound and just.
There's some busyness going on in the background. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you can't hear, or that you're not listening, or that you're not participating. That's just a thing that's going on at the same time. Yeah. Right? It could be that I'm not paying attention.
It's like fidgeting.
Okay. So the new fidget is a smartphone or earbuds or something like that, essentially. Yeah, that's interesting to note. Because I think, I saw just recently there was several states that are looking to ban smartphones from the school campus because they think it's going to.
Even we have to put them in we have to put them in bags. You have
to put them in bags.
We got to put them up as soon as you get in class, and I don't think it's like the end all be all, but I definitely think I learned a lot more in the class without it.
So you do think that it helped? Not having it.
I think it should be there. Like, if I need to use something or something, like, I don't think it should be banned from campus, but like, it not being out all the time definitely made me learn more. Like, my grades were significantly better this year than they were, like, freshman year where we were able to have our phones.
Okay. So you think it did sort of pull your attention away then?
Yeah.
And so that's interesting because as they're becoming more, they're already everywhere. These things are in places where they don't even have, they never had hardline phones. They just skipped that. Yeah. People are in remote villages and that have iPhones, and there's a tower on the island, and they have a little solar panel and a battery that charges their phone, and they communicate with the world in that way. Like, they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere now, and it's like you're expected to have it. Not only is it there, you're expected to have it, and that happened in my lifetime. Where we went from it being a novelty.
Yeah, somebody might have a phone.
Yeah, I remember I had a flip phone, It was the Motorola flip phone, the first one.
Yeah.
And you'd pull the antenna out the top, and it was about that thick. Right? I was like, look how light this thing is. I stick it in my pocket.
Like case or like flip phone?
No, it was it folded up pretty small, like smaller than an iPhone.
Oh, okay.
But it was, the thickness was like, I don't know, it was like 2 inches thick or something. It was really heavy. It was heavy. Yeah, and I remember thinking, look how small this thing is, and do that, and put it in my pocket, and my shirt would just about bust a button off my shirt because it was so heavy. Like, yeah, that thing is cool, And then I would stick it somewhere. Like I would go fishing, and I would have it, say, in a tackle box or something, or tucked away in case I needed it. But it wasn't something that was monitored or checked. Like I didn't expect to get a phone call. You see what I mean? It was used for me to call out. It wasn't necessarily, I wasn't expecting to get a message or a call or anything like that. But now, if you leave to go somewhere and you don't have your phone, people will turn around and go back. We have to get that thing. What if they're trying to get a hold of me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, when I was younger, my mom would go turn the ringer off on the phones. At a certain time of night, and that was it.
Yeah.
You could still call out, right? But you go underneath the phone because it was actual landline phone, and you just turn the ringer off. So you could, if you needed to get a hold of us in an emergency, you weren't going to do it.
Yeah.
The next day is when you were going to get it. But now everything is sort of expected right up front, and I think that's a bad thing. That part,
Yeah, we have no patience at all.
Yeah, there's no patience, and it's also a lot of pressure on people. That's something that's different in the world, and it may be why your generation is
so much anxiety and everything.
Yeah, there's mental health issues. They're more aware about a number of different things, like we talked about earlier. They have earbuds in, trying to
black
everything else out. Yeah, because there's too much. It's like information overload all the time. There's so many things happening, and I find, like, for me, if I just try to step away for a moment, and if I come back to my phone, I've got messages and missed calls, and I have them on there right now, right? Just for during this conversation, I have 4 messages and a missed call. It's a constant presence with us, and that's, I think, difficult. And in some ways, I'm very glad that I didn't have that when I was younger. I'm glad that there weren't cameras everywhere when I did stupid things when I was younger.
Yeah,
that people could post online and try to ruin your life. So there's so many good things about it. But it's also a problem, right? And
I definitely wish I didn't start out with it.
So you feel like you'd been better off if you would have not had it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
The opportunity, sort of, what I would say is to be a kid.
Yeah, I wish I definitely had a more out there childhood. I feel like we're so pushed to just grow up and go out there now.
Mm-hmm. Well, because the world is now in your pocket.
Yeah, but
it's not something out there somewhere.
You'll have boomers or whatever say "Oh, I had to work a job when I was 12."
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're working that job. You're not pushed into the world perspective yet. It's really just, it's all right there.
You didn't know about anything past
that, past
where you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was having a conversation with Larry, and it was, that was one of the things I wanted to tease out, and because we were talking about his dad, who was born in 1885, right, 140 years ago, and the way that he kind of saw the world, right, it was, your world was wherever you were. And I think throughout most of human history, people never traveled more than 50 miles from where they were born, like in general, other than the rare instance when there were some migration somewhere, or we're forced to leave or to go somewhere. We do that now for fun, right? To go on vacation. That wasn't something that previous generations would have ever done. Now it's like a thing. Let's go explore over here. Let's go hiking as a fun thing. Before, people were like, let's see if we can make it up this mountain and not die.
Yeah.
Because I want to be the first one to do it. There was the adventurer, basically. But everybody else sort of stayed where they were. And now all this stuff is being, dumped in, and we're supposed to participate in the world. And now, because you can follow on social media world leaders all over the world, and you know what they're saying at the moment they say it, right? And if there's a threat that turns out to be nothing, but there was a threat of, wow, what's happening with Russia? What's going on with North Korea or Iran or whatever? It's right there in your face all the time. And that's such a different way, I think, to experience the world. How do I eat the meat and spit out the bones, right, of the information that's out there? It's a hard thing. And so I feel like maybe there must be a way to help people to navigate that. I don't know what that is, because I didn't experience it in the same way. But almost training for the world has to be different because of the way that tech is. My parents could not have helped me navigate technology as it was coming out. There's just no way.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't know, what are these things that are coming in the mail? It's called AOL, right? These little discs. And that was the question they were asking. Like, well, it's the internet, right? So we can dial up.
Floppy disk?
No, there were CDs that started coming out, with AOL, America Online. And that was free internet for a month, right? You had to dial out. And, they wouldn't have helped with that, or they could have tried, right? But what's out there in that world? And they had no idea. So there was no way that they could have prepared my generation for looking at that, for accessing it, and I don't know that my generation could have prepared yours for what you're experiencing, but I feel like there has to be sort of a way of thinking about the world in general that would help us to navigate whatever comes next, and I don't know what that is. But maybe somebody a lot smarter than me will figure that out. But
hopefully,
yeah. I mean, but it needs to be done. I think there needs to be a proper way of thinking. But then, even if you get that, how then do you get the information out there to people to begin with, right? And to participate in it and to do all the rest.
To get it heard. Yeah,
to be heard. The world is changing rapidly. And the access of information, it wasn't very long ago, that people didn't know. I mean, Truman didn't even know that Hiroshima was bombed until the following day. He had no idea that a nuclear weapon was just dropped.
Wait, so that scene in Oppenheimer, where they're telling him about he's telling him to bomb him? Is that not real?
No, he told them to do it.
Oh, okay.
When it became available, but it took some time for that to happen. He didn't know.
Yeah.
He didn't know when it.
If it was going to be effective or not.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't even the right site. That was the third alternate, or the second alternate site. There was a different site that was supposed to be where the bomb was going to drop. But then if there was weather, then you had to go to that one. If there's a problem with this one, you have to go to that one. And it was that third one. And
that changed the world for a good 40 years.
Yeah, it changed the world, and he didn't even know about it. The President of the United States, who's commanding the armed forces in a world war, the power to drop nuclear weapons and kill hundreds of thousands of people at any moment, right? From any one bomb.
We didn't have efficient.
He didn't even know that it had just happened until some time after. And right now, I mean, I can know if somebody's feeding their fish in some aquarium somewhere because there's a live cam watching that thing happen. Or we can watch some panda that's born in a zoo in some place in the world. I mean,
You could go look up the Ukraine conflict right now.
exactly. You can see it happening at this moment from people's phones that they have in their hand, and so that's a far cry from the way that the world was, And there's a lot of things happening at one time, so it does make me feel a little. How do I say this? I don't feel sorry for Gen Z, but I feel like some empathy toward trying to navigate the world, And so I think this conversation helps me to do that, to think through that, and to try to understand what it means. Because I don't want to be perceived as talking down to someone, right? I know the standard response is, well, that's too bad you don't like that. That's kind of the way that it goes. This is what I say, and this is the way that it is, right? And that's not getting through, because scared straight doesn't work.
No.
That's been proven over and over again.
A lot of those kids end up going to jail.
Yeah, it doesn't work. They've just been tested over and over again. It just doesn't work. We're like, we're going to threaten them. You're like, ooh, we're scared, and they're not really scared,
If that would have worked, World War II wouldn't have even happened.
Exactly. It didn't work. So we have to think about, I think, the way that we talk to one another, so that we're not speaking past each other, or we're not talking in a way that is just being drowned out by the world, or we don't look like anybody. If I'm talking to someone, it needs to be in a way that they feel like I'm actually talking to them.
Yeah.
And so that it can be taken, so that we can go deeper, so that we can talk about things. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So this is quite a span. Like I said, I've talked to Larry, and going back 140 years ago into now, and the difference between those it's crazy, right? And I'm sort of not quite in the middle of that, but I'm back a few years, and looking at it in that way makes me think, whenever I thought that maybe my parents were silly, for a time, because I knew better. Then I got older, and then my kids probably think the same thing about me. And then I thought about them, and then, because I've joined in sometimes with the, rants against the way that the world is now, yeah. Right? Get off my lawn kind of stuff. But that's not really an effective way to talk to people. It's not an effective way to get information out there. You can't force feed information to people and have them actually get it. I don't think that's going to work. And so we have to figure out ways to connect, and thinking through all that. And it makes more sense to me why, like, say, YouTube Shorts, right, which are 16 seconds, or how long is it on TikTok? What's the time? What most videos? There's a range.
The longest they go is like 3 minutes, but I don't see people watching those. It's like the shortest is 15 seconds.
Okay, so those kinds of 15-second bites, are what people are taking in.
Yeah. And they're not really getting anything from it. If you watch so many different videos, I mean, you can't tell me what.
Yeah, what was the one? Yeah, 10 videos ago or 3 videos ago.
You don't know.
Yeah. So you have to somehow break through that to get to the point where we can have actual conversations. So anyway, so this has been an interesting conversation. Sam, I appreciate you coming on and just talking. We'll have to get together again to talk about some other things too. Things that are actually affecting the world at this moment. Also, I'm thinking about deep fakes and AI and the implications of that. What's that going to mean for how we can know what's true about the world? Because if we're getting all of our information from here, what does that mean if I'm finding deep fakes and I don't know they're deep fakes? Or how do I figure that out? That's going to be a tough road, I think, for your generation and for the next, because those are only going to get better as technology gets better. So we need to figure out a way forward before it happens.
We need to grow up before technology does.
Exactly. All right. Appreciate it, Sam. Thank you for coming on.